The forest is a cathedral of shadows, ancient pines clawing at a moonless sky like the fingers of the damned. Wind sighs through the branches, carrying the metallic tang of rain-soaked earth and the faint, acrid bite of cordite from distant lines. No birds sing here. No leaves rustle without purpose. This is the Siegfriedline's savage fringe, where the Ardennes chill seeps into bones like regret. A German sergeant, Feldwebel Karl Becker, hunches in a muddy foxhole, his Mauser cradled like a child's toy gone wrong. His face, etched by 3 years of Krieg, gleams pale under the flicker of a dying cigarette. Around him, his squad, boys from the Ruhr, hollow-cheeked and whispering, peer into the void. They've heard the stories. Die Nachtwölfe, the night wolves, American ghosts that slink through the trees, silent as sin, striking with bayonets before the first shot cracks the air. Verdammt, it's them again, Becker mutters. His breath fogging the night. He stubs out the cigarette on his boot heel, the scrape of leather on steel a tiny thunder in the hush. Terrible Terry's dogs. They come with the dark, like the devil's own hunt. A private, no more than 19, swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing like a buoy in a storm. Schatz, tell us true, what makes him so terrible? Is it the tanks? The bombers? Becker's laugh is a rasp, dry as bone meal. He leans back against the splintered log revetment, eyes distant, remembering Tunisia's sun-blasted sands where the name first slithered into Afrika Korps dispatches like a curse. 9 Yoma. It's not machines. It's the man. He don't fight fair. He fights dirty, walks the lines cursing like a sailor, uniform caked in the same mud as his boys. Germans fall back, and there's Allen, grinning through the smoke, cigar clamped in his teeth, yelling, "Come on, you sons of bitches, let's give 'em hell." His men? They follow him into the jaws of it, not for glory, for him. The wind picks up, moaning through the pines, and somewhere in the underbrush, a twig snaps. The squad freezes, rifles snapping up, hearts hammer like war drums in their chests, but it's nothing, just the forest breathing. Becker exhales slow and shaky. They say he was born for this, a wild one, kicked out of their fancy school for being too much fire. But war loves fire, and terrible Terry, he burns bright. The screen fractures like shattered glass, shards of memory bleeding into one another. The forest dissolves into the stark, sun-bleached sprawl of a cavalry post on the Texas frontier, 1900s. Dust devils dance across the parade ground, kicking up the sharp scent of horse sweat and sun-baked leather. Young Terry de la Mesa Allen, 13 and wiry as a mesquite branch, watches his father, Colonel Samuel Allen, drill the troopers. Samuel's voice booms like artillery. Eyes front, heels together, the cavalry don't falter. But Terry's eyes wander to the horizon where thunderheads bruise the sky, promising chaos. Father's world is order, Terry thinks, boots polished to mirrors, reins taut as piano wire. But me, I feel the storm in my veins. Born on April Fool's Day, 1888, at Fort Douglas, Utah Territory, Terry grew up chasing echoes of the Old West. His mother, Consuelo Conchita Alvarez de la Mesa, spun tales of Spanish lancers charging Moors under starlit skies. His father, a stern cavalryman who'd chased Apaches across the Badlands, taught him the saber and the spur. But Terry? He learned the itch, the restless pull toward the edge, where discipline frays and instinct takes the bit. By 1907, that itch dragged him to West Point. The Hudson River's gray churn mirrors the cadet's churning gut as he steps off the train, plebe uniform stiff as a coffin board. The Corps of Cadets marches past, a machine of gray wool and clipped commands, the air thick with pipe tobacco and the faint institutional reek of boiled cabbage from the mess hall. Terry salutes, fist to brow, but his grin betrays him. Too wide, too wolfish for the stone-faced upperclassman. "Name, mister," barks a first-year towering over him like a drill press. "Allen, sir. Terry de la Mesa Allen," he replies, voice steady, but his eyes spark with that frontier fire. The hazing begins at Reveille. Endless push-ups on the frosted quad, the grind of palms against icy gravel drawing beads of blood. "Drop and give me 20, beast!" The point breaks weaklings like you. Terry pushes through, sweat stinging his eyes, muscles screaming like overtaxed springs. They want statues, he thinks, gasping, carved from marble. But I'm mesquite, twisted tough, growing where it damn well pleases. Classes grind on, mathematics like labyrinths of lead, engineering a siege against the mind. Terry excels in horsemanship, thundering across the plain on a borrowed mount, wind whipping his jacket, the thunder of hooves drowning the sergeant's stopwatch. But the classroom? It's a cage. He pores over texts by lantern light in the barracks, the yellow glow casting long shadows that dance like specters on the walls. Ordnance and gunnery, those mechanical lovers' quarrels of ballistics and powder charges, elude him. Equations blur into rebellions. He sketches cavalry charges in the margins instead. Whispers spread through the mess hall, over trays of gray stew and hard bread that tastes of sawdust. Alan's a wild Indian, they murmur. Can't hack the books. Father's pulling strings, but even that won't save him. Terry hears it all. Fork paused midair, the clatter of silverware a mocking chorus. Let him talk, he seethes inwardly, jaws set like flint. Books win battles on paper. I'll win 'em in the dirt. The axe falls in 1911. Superintendent's office. Polished oak desk, the air heavy with cigar smoke, and the faint polish of authority. Colonel Allen stands ramrod straight beside his son, face a mask of granite. Terry, slighter now, uniform hanging loose from skipped meals and stolen smokes, meets the superintendent's gaze without flinching. Cadet Allen, your deficiencies in ordnance and gunnery are irredeemable, the man intones, voice smooth as oiled leather. The academy demands precision. You offer chaos. You're dismissed. The words land like a gut punch, but Terry doesn't buckle. He snaps a salute. Crisp as a rifle bolt. Understood, sir, but war ain't a classroom, you'll see. Outside, on the granite steps, the Hudson wind bites cold. Father claps his shoulder, hard, wordless, and turns away. Terry stands alone, watching plebeians drill below, their formations perfect, predictable. They march to orders. I'll ride the storm. He doesn't slink home. Instead, the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. becomes his forge. Law books replace drill manuals, but the fire simmers. He graduates in 1912, commissioned as a second lieutenant in the cavalry. Backdoor entry, they call it. But to Terry, it's vindication wrapped in khaki. Posted to the 13th Cavalry at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, he drills troopers under a sun that blisters like God's own forge. The air hums with the creak of saddle leather, the snort of horses slick with lather, the sharp crack of reins on haunches. But peace chafes. Terry paces barracks at night, the floorboards groaning under restless boots, dreaming of charges across no man's land. Letters to Old Point classmates, stilted, signed with forced respect, betray the scar. They called me failure. I'll make 'em eat those words in blood. Promotions come slow. First lieutenant in 1916, captain on the eve of America's plunge into the Great War. He ships out in 1917, the Atlantic a roiling beast under troopship bows, salt spray mingling with the vomit of green recruits. France greets him with mud and menace. The trenches of the Western Front, a labyrinth of slime-slick earth walls slowing like rotten flesh, the air a stew of chlorine gas and unwashed fear. Terry, now a major in the 90th Division, leads patrols into no man's land under star shells that bloom like malignant flowers. The suck of boots in mire, the whisper of barbed wire snagging sleeves, it's symphony to his wild heart. One night, near Saint-Mihiel, he crouches with his platoon, faces blackened with boot polish, breaths shallow as prayers. The barrage lifts and they surge forward, bayonets glinting like fangs. A German machine gun nests ahead, spitting lead in furious arcs. Men crumple, screams swallowed by the roar. Terry charges, pistol blazing, "Follow me, you bastards! We end this tonight!" Bullets whine past his ear, hot as hornet stings. He vaults the nest, clubbing the gunner with his Colt's butt, blood slicking his glove. The position falls. His men cheer, ragged and raw, slapping his back as dawn paints the sky in bruise purple. Wounded twice, shrapnel carving furrows across his thigh, gas burning his lungs like swallowed coals, he earns the Silver Star and a chest full of ribbons. But it's the lessons that scar deepest. In the aid station, swathed in bandages that reek of iodine and despair, he watches a lieutenant, fresh from stateside, all polish and protocol, berate a private for a soiled uniform. "Standard, soldier, even in hell we shine." Terry's laugh bubbles up wet with pain. "Shine, kid, you shine, you draw fire. Leadership ain't boots, it's blood first, questions never." The words root in him, a creed forged in the charnel house of 1918. Armistice comes, bells tolling across a Europe knee-deep in graves, but Terry returns changed, not broken, but bent toward the blade's edge. Back in the States, the interwar years drag like a hangover. Forts in the Philippines, dust bowls in Kansas, garrison life, all spit and paperwork. Terry rises, lieutenant colonel by 1933, colonel in 1940. He drills National Guard units, his voice a whip crack over parade grounds. Move like you mean it. War don't wait for laggards. But the brass eyes him warily. Too profane, they whisper in mahogany-paneled clubs, cigars curling smoke like accusations. Too fond of the bottle, the brawl, the bawdy song. Restless, they label him. Unfit for stars. In 1941, as storm clouds gather over Pearl Harbor's grave, George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff, a man who sees chess in chaos, handpicks Terry for the 1st Infantry Division. The Big Red One, they call it. Veterans of the Marne now stiffening for the next inferno. Terry takes command in August, standing before assembled ranks on a Carolina field. Summer heat waving the air like a fever dream. His uniform, already rumpled, tie askew, a grin splitting his weathered face. Men, he booms, voice gravel and gospel, I'm Terry Allen. I don't give a damn about salutes or shine. I care about killing Nazis and coming home. You fight for me? I'll fight for you harder, that's the deal. Cheers erupt, a roar that shakes the pines. But in the officer's tent later, over maps lit by hissing lanterns, a young major, Omar Bradley, cool as Riverstone, watches with measured eyes. Bold words, Terry, but boldness without discipline is just noise. Terry meets his gaze, cigar smoke veiling the challenge. Discipline wins parades, Omar. Heart wins wars. The army thought he was too wild for war. The war was about to prove them wrong. The earth heaves like a dying beast under the barrage's fury. Dawn creeps reluctant over the horizon, a smear of blood red on the eastern sky, illuminating the scarred face of the western front. Trenches zigzag like lightning scars across the mud-churned fields, their walls slick with ochre slime that clings to woolen greatcoats like a lover's regret. The air is a toxic soup, cordite's sharp bite mingling with the rotten sweet rot of unburied dead, the low groan of wounded men echoing like wind through cracked bones. Major Terry Allen, 30 years old and forged lean by 2 years of this infernal grind, hunkers in a command dugout half collapsed by yesterday's shelling. Rainwater pools at his boots, soaking through the leather with a patient malice. His face, hawkish nose, dark eyes shadowed like storm clouds, gleams with sweat and grime, a stubble of beard framing a mouth set in grim determination. Around him, a cluster of lieutenants and runners, faces gaunt as skulls under steel helmets, pore over a map pinned to a splintered ammo crate. The lantern's flame sputters, casting jittery shadows that dance like imps on the canvas walls. The wicks hiss, the only counterpoint to the distant rumble of Pershing's guns. "Artillery's walking us in, sir," says Lieutenant Elias Grant, a Kansas farm boy with ink-fresh bars on his shoulders, voice steady but fingers trembling as he traces the blue pencil line across the salient. Hours 5:45. But Jerry's nests are dug deep, machine guns zeroed on every approach. Day assault suicide. Terry straightens, joints popping like distant rifle cracks, and leans over the map. His breath fogs the paper, carrying the faint whiskey tang from last night's ration, shared with the sentries, because a dry throat fights no better than a dry well. These boys are green as spring wheat, he thinks, plucked from desks and dreams, fed lies about glory. But glory's a whore. Fucks you quick and leaves you bleeding. He taps the pencil's eraser on a cluster of red ink dots. German strongpoints, thorns in the doughboy's advance. "Suicide if we play it straight, Elias," Terry replies, his Texas drawl low and laced with gravel, like a saber sheathed in sand. "But we ain't playing straight. Last war's lesson. Charge in the sun, you die in the light. Tonight, we own the dark." The men exchange glances, a ripple of unease through the dugout's fetid air. Night attacks? Whispers of madness from the Somme, where shadows swallowed whole battalions. But Terry's eyes burn with that frontier fire. Apaches taught his father to strike unseen, and now the sun preaches it like gospel. He straightens, clapping Grant's shoulder with a gloved hand that creaks like old saddle leather. "Darkness don't pick sides, boys. It hides the brave and the afraid. We use it. Blacken faces, muffle bayonets, crawl like wolves till we're in their throats. Then, hell's choir sings." The memory fractures again, shards slicing back to 1917. The troopship Leviathan plows the Atlantic's gray swells. A Leviathan indeed, 40,000 souls crammed into steel bowels that reek of brine, bilge, and the sour fear of unblooded men. Terry, fresh captain in the 90th Division, paces the crowded deck amid a sea of olive drab. the salt spray stinging his cheeks like a slap from fate. Recruits huddle in clusters, seasick and silent, clutching letters from sweethearts or mothers, the paper curling in damp fists. A harmonica wails a mournful Shenandoah, its reeds wheeze cutting through the waves' ceaseless crash. Below decks, in the officers' mess, a narrow tube lit by swaying bulbs that buzz like angry hornets, Terry corners a grizzled sergeant major, Harlan Pops Whitaker, veteran of Saint-Mihiel. The air hangs heavy with pipe smoke and the oily tang of tinned corned beef. "Pops, these kids are cannon fodder if we march 'em like parade ground puppets," Terry says, forking a lump of the meat, its gristle tough as boot sole. Frogs and Tommies learned it at Verdun. Daylight's a killer, night's the equalizer. Whitaker chews slow, eyes squinting through the haze, his mustache a salt and pepper bristle. "Heard that tune in Cuba, Cap'n. Teddy's Rough Riders hit moonlight charges, but it was chaos. Horses screaming, vines grabbing ankles. Night blinds the brave same as the fool." Terry leans in, voice dropping to a conspirator's hush, the deck plates thrumming underfoot like a giant's heartbeat. "Blinds, sure, but it levels. No wire you can't feel, no gun you can't flank silent. Train 'em to think in black, patrols by feel, signals by touch. War's changed, Pops, trenches make kings of shadows." The old man nods, slow as dawn, and stubs his pipe on the scarred table. "You're a wild one, Alan. Brass'll skin you for it, but hell might just work." France swallows them whole by October. Le Havre's docks, a mad scrum of crates and curses, the air thick with coal smoke from locomotives snorting like iron dragons. The 90th, Texas and Oklahoma draftees, rough-hewn as longhorns, marches inland under autumn rain that turns roads to quagmires, boots sucking mud with each step, a symphony of misery. Terry rides at the column's head on a borrowed bay, its flanks lathered white, but he dismounts often, tramping beside the men, sharing smokes rolled from damp Bull Durham, the tobacco's bitter bite a small rebellion against the damp chill. "Eyes up, you sorry bastards," he bellows at a straggler, clapping the kid's helmet with a grin that flashes white in the gloom. "France ain't Kansas, but it beats a desk job. And me? I'll get you home, or die trying." The men chuckle, ragged and real, the sound cutting the column's drag like a knife through fog. Word spreads. Captain Allen's no martinet. He eats cold hash from the same can as privates, curses in 3 languages, English, Spanish from his mother's blood, and the pidgin French of whores in Le Havre. In billets, a drafty barn stinking of hay and manure, he gathers squads by firelight, the flames popping like small arms fire, shadows leaping on rafters like specters at a hoedown. "Listen up," he says one night, cross-legged on straw that pricks through his breeches, a captured Luger disassembled on his knee for show and tell. "Jerry's got concrete and coaxials. We got grit and the moon. Night patrol. Move slow, breathe shallow, feel the wire before it feels you. Bayonets quieter than a whisper, thrust up under the ribs. And if it goes to hell, scream like Comanches. Let 'em know the devil's loose." A private, freckled kid named O'Malley pipes up from the circle's edge, voice cracking like thin ice. "Sir, what if we get lost? Dark as Satan's arse out there." Terry's laugh booms, warm as bourbon, easing the knot in their guts. "Lost? Boy, in war, lost is forward. Follow the stars or my ugly mug. We stick, we strike, we survive." He reassembles the pistol with a click that echoes promise, then stands, offering a hand to pull O'Malley up. "These ain't soldiers yet," Terry muses, gripping the boy's calloused palm, "but they'll be wolves. My wolves." The first blood comes at Blancmont Ridge, October's chill turning breath to ghosts. The 90th assaults under a barrage that shakes the earth like God's own tantrum, shells shrieking in, bursting in geysers of black earth and iron hail. Terry leads from the front, helmet low, pistol in one fist, trench knife in the other, its edge honed to a whisper. The wire's a tangle of barbs that snag sleeves and flesh alike, drawing thin lines of blood that mix with the rain. Over, damn you," he roars, heaving a sergeant over a snarled coil, the man's grunt lost in the din. Bullets snap overhead, zipping like hornets drunk on hate. A runner crumples beside him, helmet spinning into the muck, a neat red hole in his brow. Terry doesn't pause, can't, or the fear'll root him. First one's the knife twist, he thinks, throat tight as wire. Just numbers. But Christ, they're boys. They breach the line at dusk, the sun a bloated orange eye sinking into the moose. German positions, pillboxes like concrete warts, spitting tracers that lace the twilight gold. Terry signals, 2 fingers low, a ghost of a whistle, and his platoon melts into the gloaming. Faces blackened with burnt cork that smears like sin. Bayonets taped to silence rattles. They crawl belly down through stubble fields, the wheats rasp against wool a lover's murmur, hearts pounding a war drum only they hear. The nest looms, a low hump of sandbags, the guns chatter a mechanical snarl. Terry rises cat-silent, knife leading, and slips behind the crew. The gunner turns, too late. The blade finds his throat, a wet gurgle stifled by glove. His mates whirl, rifles bucking, but the platoon erupts, shadows given fangs. Shouts in guttural German mix with English curses, the air thick with powder flash and the copper reek of spilled life. It ends in minutes, bodies twisted like broken dolls, the MG-08 smoking silent. Back in the lines, under a sky pricked with stars like distant bayonets, Terry tallies the cost. 3 dead, 5 hit. He kneels by O'Malley's form, the kid's eyes staring blind at the void, chest hold neat as a ticket punch. 18 summers, Terry thinks, hand closing the lids gentle as a father's. Good wolf, son? Rest now. The platoon gathers, faces hollowed by firelight from a shared cigarette, the tobacco's glow a tiny sun in the dark. We took it, sir, Grant says, voice thick, passing the butt. Your way, night way. Terry inhales deep, smoke curling from nostrils like dragon's breath, the burn chasing the ache. Aye, but remember, dark hides us all. Brave or broke, we bleed the same. Next time, we think deeper. Plan the black like it's ours. The doctrine seeds there, in the charnel hush after battle. Patrols evolve. Not blind stabs, but chess in shadow. Scouts mapping by touch. Signals with pebbles clicked like Morse in palms. The 90th Night reps become legend among the AEF. Pershing's own staff officers scribble notes, whispering of this Texas wildcat who turns midnight to ally. Wounds pile on Terry, gas at Ypres, a bullet grazing his ribs at Sedan, but each scar etches the creed deeper. Lead from the bleed. Fight where they fear to look. Armistice silences the guns on November 11th, the dawn so still it aches. The front falls quiet, echoes fading like a held breath released. Terry stands on a rise overlooking the Meuse, its waters leaden under frost-rimed banks, the valley a quilt of craters stitched with wire. His uniform hangs loose, ribs taped under wool, a flask's warmth sloshing in his pocket. We won, he thinks, but the word tastes ash. But at what price? Boys to ghosts, dreams to dirt. A courier approaches on horseback, hooves crunching frost like brittle bone, envelope crisp in his gloved fist. Major Allen, sir, citation from division, Distinguished Service Cross for Blancmont. Terry takes it, unfolds the paper with fingers numb from more than cold. Words of valor typed neat as a noose. He folds it away, gaze drifting to the horizon where the sun gilds the scars. Tell him thanks, but medals don't bury the dead. He didn't just fight in the dark, he learned to think in it. The North African desert unfolds like a vast, scorched canvas, dunes rippling gold under a sun that's dipped low, bleeding crimson into the horizon. The air shimmers with heat's dying breath, dry as bone dust, laced with the oily tang of diesel from idling Shermans and the faint, acrid whisper of spent powder from yesterday's probes. Olive groves cling to the weighty's edges, their gnarled trunks twisted like old men's fingers, leaves whispering secrets in the hot Sirocco wind. This is El Guettar, a choke point in the Marne line where Rommel's veterans, sun-hardened panzers and 88s that scream like banshees, wait like scorpions in the sand. The 1st Infantry Division, Terry Allen's big red one, digs in along the pass's ragged spine. Doughboys, faces caked in khaki grit, shovel entrenchments that collapse as fast as they're clawed, the sand sighing back like a reluctant grave. M1 Garans lean against revetments, stalks warm from the day's bake, while canteens clank like wind chimes in the breeze. Terry, now Major General, 54, but moving like a man half his age, strides the line on foot, boots kicking up puffs of talc-fine dust that settle on his sweat-damp collar. His helmet rides easy, pushed back to reveal a shock of graying hair matted with salt. His tunic's open at the throat, tie long discarded, a half-chewed cigar jutting defiant from his grin. "Look at this shit, boys!" He hollers to a cluster of foxhole squatters, voice booming over the low murmur of the line, carrying the drawl of Texas sunsets. Rommel's got his fancy Afrika Korps, tanks that purr like kittens, guns that sing opera. Us, we've got sand in our cracks and fire in our bellies. Tonight, we sing louder. A sergeant, Joey Tex Ramirez, Short, stocky Chicano from El Paso, eyes sharp as switchblades, spits a wad of tobacco juice into the dust, the splat dark against the ochre. "General, sir, them 88s'll turn us to Swiss cheese come light. What's the play? Charge like it's Gettysburg." Terry crouches beside the hole, elbow on the sandbag lip, the rough weave scraping his sleeve like a friend's rough pat. Up close, his eyes, dark pools flecked with gold, hold the squad's gaze, steady as a lodestone. The scent of him hits them, sweat-soaked wool, cigar ash, and that faint, wild hint of horse from his cavalry days. These kids, he thinks, scanning their faces, some pimpled with youth, others etched by Sicily's fresh scars. They crossed the Atlantic wide-eyed, now they're tasting the wolf in their throats. My job? Feed the beast, not the fear. "Gettysburg was daylight folly, Tex," he replies, voice dropping to a conspirator's rumble, the wind tugging at his words like a thief. "We hit at night. My old trick from the Marne. Crawl the dark, own the dawn, flank 'em where the moon don't shine. No brass bands, just bayonets and balls." The men lean in, a circle of helmets glinting like dull coins, the shared breath a fragile bond against the desert's vast indifference. Nods ripple through them, fear tempered to resolve, like steel quenched in oil. From a nearby rise, binoculars catch the glint of German armor, squat Panzer IVs hull down behind berms, their long 75s probing the gloom like blind fingers. Rommel's dispatches already murmur of this terrible Terry. The Yankee who fights like a Bedouin, all ambush and audacity, no regard for the gentleman's war of salutes and ceasefires. The memory bleeds back 3 months to the Big Red One's baptism in the Mediterranean crucible. November 1942, Fidala beachhead, Morocco, waves crashing foam-flecked against Higgins boats that grind ashore like iron behemoths birthing. The surf's roar drowns the Vichy French artillery's spiteful cough, shells blooming black on the tide flats, hurling geysers that rain salt and shrapnel. Terry wades in knee-deep, Colt 45 holstered low on his hip, the water cold as betrayal against sun-baked skin. Behind him, the division surges, thousands strong, rifles held high, faces masks of salt-crusted determination under corrugated helmets. "Move, you lazy sons," he bellows, splashing forward, pistol drawn, embarking at a French pillbox that chatters defiance. Bullets whip the foam around his calves, zipping like hornets in a jar. A lieutenant stumbles beside him, young, ivy polish still gleaming through the grime, face paling as a round clips his pack. "Sir, we should wait for the heavies. Naval guns'll soften 'em." Terry grabs the man's collar, hauling him upright with a grip like rusted iron, water sluicing from their boots in muddy rivulets. "Wait, boy, war's a whore, makes you pay double for hesitation. Follow me, or stay and drown." He charges the dune line, men streaming in his wake, a human tide crashing against the enemy's ragged edge. By nightfall, Casablanca falls, not with parades, but with handshakes in the souks, French officers toasting the fou American who led from the surf. Kasserine Pass follows in February, a green slaughter under Rommel's lash. The desert's a white-hot anvil, sun hammering down like a spiteful god, turning tank tracks to molten scars in the sand. American columns, unblooded, uncoiled, snarl into the jaws of the Afrika Korps, Stukas diving with banshee whales, 88s flaying armor like paper. Terry's CP, a canvas tent flapping in the gale, reeks of gasoline and fear sweat, maps pinned under shell casings that roll like dice. Runners burst in, faces ashen, gasping reports of burning Grants and routed batteries. Omar Bradley, now his corps commander, the soldier's general, with eyes like calm reservoirs, storms in via jeep, dust-caked and stern, his staff trailing like worried ducklings. The air between them crackles, thick as the static from a field radio squawking retreat orders. "Terry, your division's exposed, flung forward like dice in a craps game. Pull back, regroup, that's an order." Terry stands over the map table, fingers splayed on the linen like claws on prey, the fabrics weave rough under his nails. His cigar's gone out, ash flaking onto Tunisia's sketched contours. Omar's right, by the book. But books don't bleed. Pull back, with boys dying on that ridge? No, Omar, we hold the flank, hit 'em oblique at dusk. Night's our friend. Remember France? Bradley's jaw sets, a muscle twitching like a tripwire. Respect flickers there, for the fire, if not the folly. But duty's a heavier chain. This ain't the Marne, Terry. It's modern war, tanks, air. Your Wild West costs lives. He turns on his heel, jeeps snarling away into the haze, leaving echoes of doubt. But Terry holds. Orders his regiments to dig Devil's Gardens, mines sewn like dragon's teeth, bazookas zeroed on defiles. At twilight, as the sun melts into the Erd, he leads the counter, shadows creeping the wadis, faces blackened with axle grease that smears bitter on lips. The assault uncoils like a rattler's strike, silent till the fang sinks. Panzers brew up in gouts of orange flame, the acrid reek of burning rubber and flesh blotting the stars. German after-action reports, captured later, seethe. Der terrible Terry. Unpredictable as the simoom, his men fight like gin unleashed. Guettar cements it. March 15, the pass of furnace mouth, Luftwaffe shadows stitching the sky with bombs that bloomed thunderous. Terry's on the line again, not in some rear echelon tent, but foxholed with the 26th Infantry, periscope raised, the rubber eyepiece warm against his brow. Incoming, down you fools. Shells howl in, earth fountaining around them, the concussions slamming chests like prizefighter hooks. A blast shreds a nearby tree, shrapnel whining. One sliver kisses Tex's cheek, carving a red crescent that wells slow. Bastards got close that time, General, Tex grunts, staunching the cut with a field dressing that unfurls like a white flag of defiance. Terry slaps his back, grin feral through the dust mask of his face. Close only counts in horseshoes, Tex. Now, signal the push, wolves to the flank. Horns blare, muffled, mournful, and the 16th Regiment ghosts forward under the olive shroud, bayonets fixed, the steel's cold kiss on palms slick with nerve sweat. They hit the German anchors at midnight. Kampfgruppe Horcher. The Elite Fallschirmjägers dug in like ticks. Hand to hand in the dark, knives flashing, grunts muffled, the wet smack of rifle butts on bone. A private kid from Brooklyn named Levy drives his trench knife home, twists, pulls back bloody, then vomits into the sand, the bile's sour reek mingling with cordite. By dawn, the pass is a charnel gallery, wrecked half-tracks smoldering, Wehrmacht dead sprawled like discarded puppets, their Feldgraus stained ochre. Terry walks the ground, cigar relit, the cherries glow a tiny defiance against the paling sky. His men cluster, exhausted, elated, slapping shoulders, sharing looted schnapps that burns like liquid fire. You did it, you magnificent bastards, he roars, hoisting a canteen in toast, the tin dented from a near miss. Rommel's shitting bricks in Tripoli tonight. Word spreads like brushfire, GIs etching terrible Terry on captured bunkers, Germans in POW cages muttering Der Teufel mitten Grinsen. Even Rommel's chief of staff, in a radio intercept, concedes, Allen fights without fear of God or man. Back at 2 Corps HQ, Bradley pins the silver star on Terry's tunic, the metal cool against sweat-damp cloth. But his handshake lingers, eyes shadowed. You pulled a miracle, Terry, but miracles tempt fate. Reen in the theatrics, Eisenhower's watching. Terry salutes loose, the gesture half mock. Fate's a fickle bitch, Omar, but my boys, they'd follow me to Berlin barefoot. Laughter follows him out, but the air tastes of turning tides. April brings the yaks. Algiers, Allied HQ, a whitewashed villa perfumed with jasmine and intrigue, ceiling fans whirring lazy over teak tables strewn with dispatches. The Terry summoned, jeep ride through markets alive with haggling Berbers, the air thick with cumin and camel dung. Inside, the room's a cool crypt, potted palms rustling, maps on easels like crucified futures. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ike to friends, supreme to the world, stands at the head, pipe clenched, his grin boyish but eyes steel. Bradley flanks him, face a study in reluctant resolve. Sit down, Terry, Ike says, voice folksy as Kansas wheat, gesturing to a rattan chair that creaks under his weight. The air's heavy with English tea and unspoken verdicts. No whiskey here, just the faint, dry scent of impending rain. You've given us victories, Kasserine stemmed, Guettar cracked, your men's morale, sky high. But command's a chain, son, yours. It's frayed. Terry sits, spine straight as a ramrod, but his fingers drum the arm, a tick from West Point ghosts. Here it comes, the systems bite. Sir, results speak. My division's blooded, ready for Sicily. What's frayed? Bradley clears his throat, papers rustling like dry leaves. Discipline, Terry. Reports of irregularities, officers drinking on duty, lax salutes, your personal flair in the lines. It's inspiring the men but eroding standards. We need professionals, not cowboys. The words land like mortar rounds, each one cratering the silence. Ike leans forward, pipe smoke veiling his regret. I'm relieving you, effective immediately. Clarence Hübner takes the big red one. It's not personal, it's the war. We can't afford legends who bend rules. Terry's world tilts. The fans whir a mocking dirge, jasmine turning cloying in his throat. Fired. For loving my boys too much? For fighting like a man, not a manual? He rises slow, salutes crisp for once, voice steady as desert stone. Understood, General, but tell Hübner, those men, they're mine in blood. Stars or no, they'll remember. Outside, the jeep idles, engine's low growl a balm to the ache. He climbs in, gazes back at the villa, a fortress of fools, as it shrinks in the dust plume. They can take the division, but the heart? That's eternal. They could take his stars, but not his men's loyalty. The Carolina low country exhales its humid breath like a fevered sigh. Spanish moss draping live oaks like funeral veils. The air thick with the drone of cicadas and the faint, peaty rot of swampland beyond the wire. Camp Billy Wright sprawls under a bruised sky, a hive of raw barracks and churned parade grounds where the 104th Infantry Division, the Timberwolves, stirs to life. Fresh from draft boards and factory floors, these men, farm boys from the Dakotas, steel workers from Pittsburgh, clerks from Chicago, mill about in stiff OD wool that chafes like regret, helmets dangling from rifle slings like forgotten thoughts. The ground's a red clay slurry, sucking at boot heels with wet, insistent pulls, the scent of gun oil and fresh pine mingling with the green tang of untested sweat. Major General Terry Allen, demoted in title but unbowed in spirit, strides from a battered staff car, gravel crunching under tires still hot from the road. 55 now, but the fire in his gait belies the gray threading his temples. His uniform's already rumpled, tie knotted loose as a hangman's noose gone slack, a fresh cigar clamped between teeth that flash in a wolf's grin. Relieved of the big red one, he's been shunted here, to forge draftees into something sharper than chaff. They took my stars, he thinks, slinging his overseas cap onto the dash, the leather seat creaking like an old saddle, but not my pack. These pups, they'll howl louder than any hound. He mounts a makeshift reviewing stand, crates lashed with hemp rope that bites into palms, facing the assembled division. 12,000 souls arrayed in ragged ranks, faces upturned like sunflowers to a reluctant dawn. The wind tugs at guidons snapping like whips, carrying the distant low of cattle from neighboring fields. Terry scans them, eyes wide with that cocktail of awe and ache, shoulders squared against the unknown. Green as frog spit, he muses, but wolves sleep in every man. Wake 'em gentle, they bite blind. Wake 'em right, they hunt the moon. Soldiers of the 104th. His voice cracks the hush like a 30-06 round, drawl rolling deep as the Congaree River. I'm Terry Allen. You might have heard the whispers, fired from a hot command for being too damn good at it. Brass wants spit and polish. Me? I want teeth and heart. We're not marching to Berlin for parades. We're going to end this war, in the dark, where cowards hide and brave men thrive. A murmur ripples through the ranks, half laugh, half roar, nerves uncoiling like springs. A lanky private from Fargo, Olaf Svensson, nudges his buddy, whispering, heard he charged tanks with a pistol in Africa. Man's half mad, half god. Terry catches it, grins wider, the cigar's ember flaring like a signal fire. First lesson, Timberwolves, night owns the future. Germans fight by the clock, daylight duels, neat lines. We fight like the forests we hail from, silent, sudden, savage. From tonight, we train black, no lights after dusk. You'll learn to assemble your garrons by feel, the steel's kiss cold on your fingers. You'll crawl miles through bramble that tears like claws, till fear's just another shadow you step through. The sun dips, painting the sky in slashes of vermilion and indigo, and the division fractures into companies, whistles shrilling, sergeants barking like sheepdogs. Terry dismounts, boots thudding soft on the clay, and joins a platoon in the gloaming woods fringing the camp. Lanterns gutter out one by one, the world folding into velvet black pierced only by fireflies. Erratic pulse. The underbrush whispers betrayal. Thorns snagging sleeves with tiny rips, leaves brushing cheeks like ghostly fingers. In the murk, a squad fumbles a bayonet drill, steel clanging discordant, curses blooming muffled. Quiet, you clodhoppers, Terry hisses from the shadows, materializing like smoke, his presence a low growl that stills the air. He kneels beside Svensson, the kid's hands trembling on the blade's hilt, palms slick as pond scum. The scent of him, cigar ash and honest sweat, cuts the night's damp mold. Feel it, son, not fight it. Thumb here, like cradling a lover's neck. Thrust smooth, up under the ribs, twist for the kill. Darkness ain't enemy, it's your cloak. Svensson nods, breath hitching, and practices the motion, slow at first, then fluid, the blade slicing air with a sigh. Around them the platoon echoes, grunts of effort, the faint scrape of metal on scabbard, breath sinking like a pack finding rhythm. This is the forge, Terry thinks, rising to prowl the line, a specter among specters. Pain now, instinct later, they'll thank me when the real wolves come calling. Weeks bleed into a monochrome grind. Dawn patrols through pine thickets, where dew soaks trousers to the knee, the chill seeping bone deep till teeth chatter like Morse. Night marches under starless canopies, compasses clutch like talismans, the needles quiver a heartbeat in the fist. Terry leads them, never from a jeep's leather womb, but afoot, boots mirroring theirs in the muck, sharing canteen gulps of brackish water that tastes of iron and resolve. Pain's the teacher, boys, he rasps during a halt, slumped against a moss-bearded trunk, the bark rough as regret under his back. Embrace it. By winter you'll dance in the dark like Comanches on the warpath. The men harden. Svensson, once prone to stumbles, now navigates blindfolded, calling azimuths with the certainty of a sextant. Tex Ramirez, transferred from the Big Red One, loyal as a bloodhound, drills fire teams in silent signals. Pebble clicks for advance, owl hoots for halt, the night symphony their own. Even the officers, stiff West Pointers eyeing Terry's unorthodoxies, with pursed lips, bend. One captain, Harlan Brooks, fresh from Benning's parade polish, corners him by the officers' mess. A sagging tent reeking of boiled coffee and mildew, lantern light spilling yellow pools on the trampled grass. General, this nocturnal madness, it's breeding chaos, men jumping at shadows, morale fraying like old rope. Brooks' voice is clipped, ivy edges honed sharp, his tie a noose of propriety. Terry pours 2 mugs, steam curling like question marks, the brew bitter as quinine on his tongue. He hands one over, eyes locking steady. Chaos. Harlan, war is chaos. You polish boots, you shine for the reaper. My wolves, they'll ghost through hedgerows while Jerry sleeps snug. Morale? Watch 'em tomorrow, live fire in the black. Brooks sips, wavers, nods. The man's a relic, he thinks, but damn if the fire don't catch. The invasion's thunder still echoes. Omaha's red sands now churned to Normandy's bocage labyrinth. Hedgerows like earthen walls laced with wire that bites like betrayal. The 104th lands late, waves of LCIs grinding ashore under a sky wept gray by channel squalls, the surf's foam laced pink from earlier hells. Men wade heavy, packs dragging like anchors, the brine's salt sting mingling with the reek of diesel and damp fear. Terry's on the lead boat, wind whipping his field jacket, binoculars slung like a yoke, scanning the cliffs where 9th Division brothers claw for purchase. Timberwolves, he bellows over the coxswain's outboard snarl, spray beating his stubble like diamonds on gravel. This ain't drill. This is the dance. Hit the beach running. Find cover, dig deep. Night falls we hunt. They storm the shingle, bullets from coastal nests, zipping overhead like vengeful wasps, but the Timberwolves move with a new grace, instincts honed in Carolina black. By midnight, as the first patrols slip into the orchards, apple boughs heavy with unripe fruit that bruises soft under boots, they uncoil like shadows given sinew. Svensson leads a squad through a sunken lane, walls of chalky earth rising shoulder high, the air thick with cow manure and the faint floral rot of crushed blooms. Eyes low, breath short, he whispers, voice a thread in the dark, Garand cradled easy now, the woods grain familiar as a lover's palm. Contact comes sudden, a German outpost, MG-42 chattering from a haystack nest, tracers lacing the gloom gold. The squad drops fluid, no bunching, no panic, and flanks wide, Svensson's fire team low-crawling the furrow's lip, mud kicking elbows to a second skin. Text signals, 2 clicks, pebble on pebble. They rise as one, grenades arcing silent. Dull thumps, screams in guttural alarm, then the rush. Bayonets leading, the steel's rasp on scabbard, a prelude to the storm. The gun falls quiet, crew bayoneted in the flash and fury, blood hot and coppery on the night air. Back at the CP, a hedgerow hollow reeking of wet wool and sea ration hash, Terry tallies by firelight's miserly glow. The flames crackle, underscoring the medic's low chance. 2 wounded, 1 KA. A kid from Milwaukee, helmet caved by shrapnel, eyes staring blind at the Pleiades. Terry kneels, closing the lids with a thumb roughened by rains and rifles, the skin cool as clay. First blood's the sacrament, he thinks, throat tight as wire snare. Good wolf, run free now. The platoon gathers, faces hollowed orange by the fire, passing a flask of looted cognac that burns clean. We got 'em cold, sir, Tex reports, wiping blade on grass, the green staining darker. like Carolina, but with teeth. Terry nods, clapping shoulders in turn, the contact a spark in the chill. Aye, but remember, night's a jealous mistress. One slip she claims you. Tomorrow? We push the line, ghost the woods, make 'em doubt their gods. The Timberwolves prowl Normandy's veins. Night raids on supply dumps where shadows swallow patrols whole. The crump of satchel charges blooming muffled. Germans reel, disbelief scrawled in captured diaries. Amerikaner kommen wie Gespenster, kein Schuss nur Tod. Officers in staff cars, headlights stabbing futile at the void, swerve at imagined shapes, nerves fraying like old hemp. By Aachen's outskirts, September's mists cloaking the Hürtgen's prelude. The wolves own the rhythm. Fear inverted, a pulse that drives them forward, silent as snowfall. In the Vosges foothills, first true test, a company assault on Hill 400, pines sighing under autumn's reluctant hand, the ground a carpet of needles that muffles footfalls like conspirators. Fog rolls thick, tasting of pine sap and distant rain, turning the world to wool. The 413th Regiment creeps the slope, bayonets glinting faint under moon slivers, breaths fogging in unison. Svensson, sergeant now, leads point, heart a steady drum, the Garand's wait and old friends lean. The German line materializes, wire and watchtowers, sentries stamping cold, their murmurs guttural prayers to the dark. Tex's demo team plants thermite, the sizzle a serpent's hiss, and the breach opens, shadows pouring through, rifles cracking precise, the acrid bite of powder a lover's knife. Hand to hand erupts in the wire's tangle, grunts, thuds, the wet rip of bayonets finding home. A Fritz lunges at Svensson, bayonet thrusting wild, the kid parries, drives home, twists. The man gurgles, folds. Svensson's first kill, bile rising hot, but he swallows it down, steps over, presses on. By false dawn the hill's theirs. Bunkers smoldering, Wehrmacht routed in panicked flight, their bugles wailing retreat like wounded hounds. Terry climbs the crest at first light, cigar unlit against chapped lips, surveying the cost. Foxholes steaming with fresh dug earth, medevac jeeps churning mud plumes. His men slump euphoric, exhausted. Sharing smokes, looted watches ticking on wrists like captured heartbeats. You wolves ate well tonight, he says, voice gravel soft, passing the cigar to light on Svensson's match, the flames bloom etching their faces in amber. They ran from ghosts. Let 'em whisper our name. Word filters through the lines. Die Nachtwölfe, the night wolves. A hex on German radios, patrols doubling, nerves electric. In Berlin briefings, maps marked with red claws, Allen's pack unbound. By dawn, even the enemy had a name for him again. Terrible Terry. The Hürtgen is a green inferno, frozen in time, a labyrinth of firs whose branches interlock like the ribs of some colossal, exhumed beast. Rain lashes the canopy in sheets, turning the needle-carpeted floor to a slick morass that sucks at ankles with greedy insistence. The water's chill seeping through puttees like regret's slow drip. Fog coils low, thick as battlefield smoke, carrying the mingled reek of wet wool, pine sap, and the ever-present copper tang of blood-soaked earth. Artillery thunders distant, a rolling growl that blends with the wind's mournful howl. But here, in the heart of the Siegfried Line's wooded jaws, the 104th Infantry Division moves as one shadow among many. The Night Wolves, unbound. Major General Terry Allen, stars reclaimed, but the fire undimmed, crouches at the edge of a shell-cratered clearing, his field jacket sodden and heavy as chainmail, binoculars pressed to eyes that ache from the strain. 56 now, the lines on his face etched deeper by Normandy's toll, yet his posture remains that of the cavalryman, coiled, unyielding. A cigar, sodden and unlit, dangles from lips cracked and salt-rimed. The glow of a shielded Zippo flickers brief in his palm, illuminating the map's grease-pencil scrawls. Red arrows snaking through the green smear of the forest, like veins pulsing with intent. Around him, his staff huddles close, aides with ponchos crackling like parchment, radios hissing static prayers into the void. "They're in position, General," whispers Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks, his voice a low rasp honed by the 157th Regiment's bloody trail from Anzio's ghosts. Rain beads on his helmet's brim, dripping like tears unwept. 414th on the left, ghosts in the wire. But this fog, it's thicker than Berlin's lies. One wrong step, and we're feeling for ours in the dark. Terry lowers the glasses, the rubber eye cups warm against rain-chilled skin, and exhales a plume that mingles with the mist. Dark's our old friend, he thinks, the weight of Guettar's sands still grinding phantom grit between his teeth. But Hürtgen, This ain't ambush, it's apocalypse in slow motion. Boys deserve better than Brass's butcher shop. He claps Sparks' shoulder, the wool's damp squelch underscoring the bond. Wrong steps for the timid Felix. Signal the push, pebbles and whispers. We take Vassenac tonight, or die owning the trying. The order uncoils the wolves. Companies melting into the understory, bayonets fixed and muffled with tape that peels sticky in the wet. Svensson, now a grizzled staff sergeant, his Fargo freckles faded under a perpetual stubble, leads his platoon up the call trail, the path a scar of churned mud flanked by trunks splintered like matchwood from weeks of pounding. Boots sink calf deep, the suck and pull a siren's call to exhaustion. Rifles held cross-body, stocks slick as eels. The air tastes of rust and resin, breaths fogging in ragged unison, the only sound the faint creak of leather gloves flexing on triggers. Easy now, pups, Svensson murmurs, voice threadbare from shouting down fears in a dozen dawns. Feel the ground, it's firmer left. Jerry's dug on the crest, but their eyes are shut. We give 'em nightmares. A private, fresh-faced kid from Duluth named Harlan, boots to his mates for the shine he polishes nightly despite the mud, stumbles, curses low, his garand clattering soft against a root. Svensson hauls him up, grip firm as father's counsel. Steady, Boots. Night don't forgive the loud, but it loves the bold. Contact shatters the hush like glass under boot. A German patrol, fallbacks from the 275th Division, faces gaunt under coal scuttle helmets, stumbles into the trail's bend. A flashlight beam stabs wild, catching Svensson's sleeve in a guilty gleam. Shouts erupt, "Amerikaner, halt!" Rifles crackle, muzzle flashes blooming orange blooms in the fog, and Boots fires first, his round taking a Fritz square in the chest, the impact a dull thump lost in the sudden storm. The platoon surges, shadows resolving into fangs, bayonets thrusting through the melee, grunts and gurgles weaving with the rain's patter. A Wehrmacht corporal lunges at Svensson, Schmeisser chattering. The burst shreds bark inches from his ear, wood chips stinging like hornets. Svensson parries with rifle butt, drives the blade home. The man folds, eyes wide in the flash's afterimage, breath rattling final like wind through reeds. Vassenac falls by 300. Bunkers breached with Bangalore torpedoes that roar muffled thunder, the blast's heat a fleeting kiss on numbed cheeks. Germans reel in disarray, some surrendering with hands high and trembling, others fleeing into the pines, their retreat a phantom rustle swallowed by the wood. Terry reaches the village at first false light, jeep churning ruts that spray mud like accusations, his driver cursing the wheels fight. The square's a tableau of triumph and toll. Timberwolves slumped against shattered walls, cigarettes shared in defiant glows, the acrid bite of victory smoke cutting the fog. Medics dart like shadows, morphine sirets glinting, the moans of the hit a low dirge under the pine's sigh. He finds Boots there, the kid curled fetal by a fountain's cracked basin, uniform hold neat at the shoulder, blood welling dark and steady. Terry kneels in the muck, the stones chill bleeding through his knees, and presses a compress with hands that remember too many like this. "Hang on, son, Doc's coming. You danced good tonight, wolves like you win wars." Boots' eyes flutter, pain etching his boy face ancient. "General, it was like you said. Dark hit us, felt right." His voice fades to a whisper, hand clutching Terry's sleeve like a lifeline frayed. The pulse quits under Terry's fingers, a final stutter, gone quiet as snowfall. Another ghost for the pack, Terry thinks, throat closing like a rusted trap, rain tracing paths down his cheeks unremarked. He closes the eyes, rises slow, and turns to his men, faces turned to him, hollowed by the cost but unbowed. "We took the high ground, wolves," he says, voice gravel forged in 1,000 dawns, steady as the pines that outlast tempests. But Hürtgen ain't done. Rowers next, and Berlin after, for Boots, for all the shadows we leave. Cheers rise ragged, fists pumping the mist, but in their eyes, that fierce filial light, Terry sees the truth. Not his stars they follow, but the man who bleeds first. The campaigns cascade like dominoes in blood. The rower dams cracked in December's iron frost, the Rhine crossed in March's thaw, where pontoons bob like corks on the river's muddy surge. The currents roar, drowning the distant crump of V2s fading to impotence. Terry's wolves prowl the Reich's unraveling. Night thrusts through the Ruhr's industrial gut. Factories blooming fireballs that paint the sky hell red. The acrid reek of molten steel choking the dawn. In the Harz Mountains, final redoubt. they pocket the SS diehards. Fanatics fighting from caves that echo with the ghosts of 1,000 Nürnbergs, yet unborn. Theodore Roosevelt Jr., Teddy to the old guard, leg brace clanking like a metronome of defiance, joins a Timberwolf patrol in April, his pince-nez fogged by exertion, grin crooked as his gait. The son of the Rough Rider, assistant division commander under Terry since Normandy, mirrors him. A patrician rebel, charging foxholes at Utah Beach with a cane and a curse. By Jove, Terry, he wheezes over a captured radio, static crackling like applause. The air thick with lilac bloom, mocking the war's end. Your nighthounds have the Fritzes praying to Odin. Father's ghost approves. Hell, he'd join us for the cigars. Terry laughs, the sound bark dry, sharing a flask of looted Riesling that tastes of chalk and forgotten vineyards. Teddy, you old pirate, without your limp leading from the front, we'd be sipping stateside swill. But tell Marshall, this wins for the Wolves, not the Eagles. George C. Marshall, the architect, now Secretary of War in distant Washington, wires congratulations from a Pentagon humming with victory's hum, typewriters clacking like celebratory fire. Your methods unorthodox yielded results unmatched, it reads, the paper crisp under Terry's thumb, inked words a balm to old wounds. Leadership isn't rank, it's loyalty forged in fire. Well done, General. Omar Bradley, too, visits the Elb's banks in May. The rivers flow, a silver ribbon under truce flags waving limp in spring zephyrs. His handshakes firm, eyes holding the old respect laced now with vindication. You were right, Terry. Hard over handbook. The system's learning, slowly. But vindication's a quiet thief. VE Day dawns in May 1945. Church bells tolling across a Europe knee-deep in rubble. Timberwolves dancing jigs in cobble streets slick with rain-washed blood. Terry stands apart on a Rhine overlook. Cigar finally lit, the cherries glow a private sun against the gray. We won, he thinks, smoke curling skyward like unanswered prayers. But the boys who bought it, their silence echoes loudest. Post-war, the army chews him gentle, postings to desultory commands in occupied zones, where bureaucracy's the foe now, forms in triplicate, salutes crisp as fresh starch. He retires in 1946, a two-star general with a chest of iron and a heart heavy as lead, settling in El Paso under adobe roofs that bake gold in the sun. Letters flood in, from Svensson, farming North Dakota black earth, enclosing faded photos of wolf packs at rest, from Tex opening a cantina in Juarez, toasting the old terrible with mezcal that burns true. The big red one reunites for barbecues, ribs smoking slow over mesquite, the air rich with hickory and half-buried tails, where grizzled vets slap his back, eyes wet. You gave us more than orders, General. You gave us. Legacy creeps subtle. West Point, that old foe, names the Terry Allen Award in 1950. For courageous leadership, the plaque reads, bronze letters gleaming under Hudson's gaze. The academy that spat me out, he chuckles over newsprint, coffee steaming black as memories, now drinks from my cup. But the ache deepens in 1967. News from Nam, where jungles swallow sons like Hürtgen's maw. His boy, Terry Jr., cavalry blood calling, flies choppers into the Aya Drang's green hell. A letter arrives, folded crisp. Chopper down, sir. No survivors. The words blur, the room's adobe walls closing like trench lips. Terry sits alone in the study, walls lined with sabers and citations yellowing like old sins, the creak of his rocker a dirge. I taught him the dark, he thinks, fist closing on the phantom throttle, but not how to outrun it. Forgive me, pup. He endures, 8 more years, a grandfather's growl softening to wisdom's rumble, penning memoirs that sell modest, titled My Life Before the World War, but laced with the unspoken, the cost of leading hearts. Heart attack claims him April 12, 1969, in a VA hospital's sterile hush, monitors beeping fade to silence under fluorescent glare. No fanfare, just a quiet rites, bugler playing taps that drifts on Texas wind, carrying his ashes to Fort Bliss's Coliseum of stone. The forest fades back in. Hürtgen's pines, eternal witnesses, sighing as if in salute. Becker, the old sergeant from the opening, captured now in a Timberwolf cage, shares a smoke with Svensson over wire. You're terrible, Terry. He fought like honor's own ghost, Becker concedes, the coals glow etching lines of reluctant awe. We called him Devil, but devils don't die for their pack. Svensson nods, exhaling slow, the smoke a bridge across the divide. Nah, he was home, the kind you follow into hell knowing you'd do it twice. They called him terrible. His soldiers called him home. If you believe true heroes earn respect, not rank, subscribe for more untold World War II legends.